It'll all happen very quickly. This will rapidly drive prices down, lower interest rates, and put more money into the pockets of American consumers. It'll also bring your grocery bill way down.
The president-elect is moving the goalposts on some of his pledges, like lowering the price of groceries. It's hard to bring things down once they're up, Trump says. You know, it's very hard.
That's interesting. Isn't this the same guy that swore numerous times during his campaign that he was going to bring down inflation immediately once he took office? In fact, let's roll the tape.
We will end inflation and make America affordable again. We're going to get the prices down. We have to get them down. It's too much. Groceries, cars, everything. We're going to get the prices down. But prices will come down. You just watch. They'll come down, and they'll come down fast. Not only with insurance, with everything. Tomorrow, I will end inflation. We will cut your taxes, end inflation, slash your prices. I will end inflation. End inflation. Slash your prices to rapidly reduce inflation. I will end inflation very quickly. You know, end inflation. Slash your prices. We will cut your taxes. End inflation. Slash your prices. We're going to get your prices down.
When Trump was president the first time around, every time the stock market went off, he tied it to him personally. We got those tweets about how great he was doing because the stock market increased. But this week, he apparently believes in stock market fluctuations that have nothing to do with the president. He's even worried about his own stock. And he says these things just happen time to time. Certainly a different person than he was in his first presidency when the stock market was all about him when it was doing well. And different than he was as a campaigner when he was, again, blaming any inflation all on President Biden. But now he's a little bit more nuanced. And the reason why is because there are already economic consequences on the horizon based on his talk of trade wars and tariffs.
Oil and gas. There is no country in the world that has more. We're number one. I brought it to number one during my first term in terms of production. We're going to be number one plus. We'll do numbers that nobody will really see before. And when that happens, prices are going to start coming down.
We saw the Ontario Premier threaten to halt exports, energy exports to the United States if Trump were to do his 25% tariffs on Canadian exports and Mexican exports as he has threatened. So oil exports to the United States from Canada are about 60% of what Americans use. And our electricity we use from Canada is even higher. And they're used often in the states such as New York, Wisconsin, Michigan. This would evidently, as you can imagine, be a huge problem for America if indeed the Canadian Premier is right and he's going to stop energy exports. But it's not even just these threats that are already looming as a reason for why his talk about tariffs will harm our economy and why we will most likely get some sort of stock market dip that Trump is already trying to distance himself.
I want to delve into one of your signature promises on the campaign trail, which was to end inflation, to lower prices. You are now proposing tariffs against the United States' three biggest trading partners. Economists of all stripes say that ultimately consumers pay the price of tariffs.
I don't believe
Can you guarantee American families won't pay more?
I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee tomorrow. But I can say that if you look at just pre-COVID, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I had a lot of tariffs on a lot of different countries, but in particular China. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars, and we had no inflation.
So the EU was trying to make a trade deal with South America. For the past 20 years, they've been in negotiations. For the past 5 years, they've had a deal that they were unable to sign. And it seems as if this week, that deal is finally going to get done. This is monumental because countries like France were pushing back on this deal because South American exports to the EU will include things like farming and meat, which will hurt farmers in France and other countries. And so that's why it took so long to get this deal done, because there are interests in the EU that don't want to get this deal done. But the EU wants to sell their goods to South America. They want to sell their cars, other manufacturing, their pharmaceuticals, and in return, get the agriculture and the meat and the minerals from South America. But when they talk about why this deal was done this week, they say it was for political reasons, because of the fact that they see the United States as not being such a reliable trade partner as it has in the past because of Trump's talks of tariffs. So what we see already, and Trump hasn't even come into office yet, is that the EU, one of our biggest trading partners, looking elsewhere to trade instead of us, our farmers in Iowa, not trading as much with the EU because they will be trading with agriculture more from South America because of Trump's talk of tariffs. This is already changing the economic landscape. And this is why Trump is all of a sudden trying to detach himself from the stock market.
Let's put this in a little historical perspective, and we're going to compare the U.S. to the other major economies of the world. And you go back to 1980, you can see the growth rates weren't all that different. But around the 2000 period, we just took off. And we left them in the dust. We've continued to leave them in the dust. And in fact, the IMF last week came out with new projections that show that our growth is going to accelerate even more relative to these other countries. And let me also, though, since we are going to have an election next week, do a scorecard here on the last two presidents. Donald Trump thinks this economy is in the toilet. In fact, under Joe Biden, it grew faster than it did under Donald Trump. 3.1% average GDP growth under Biden. 2.8% under Trump, and this corrects for all the COVID things. These are straight down the middle of the fairway numbers. And then you can see that that growth, in fact, has turned into a much stronger economic performance for average Americans. GDP per capita is a way to think about standard of living. Not perfect measure, but it's directionally right. You can see that we generate $74,000 of GDP per person, and that has doubled over this period of time. And then you can, and no other country has come close to that. 54,000, 46,000. And so from 1983 to 2023, we doubled this. And we are, again, as you said earlier, the envy of the world when it comes to the standard of living that Americans have.
But it's not just Trump's tariffs that are going to hurt our economy. It's also his tax cuts. If he and Congress do what they say they will and extend his tax cut plan from the first term, it will add $4 trillion to our debt, and that money will go to wealthy Americans. Adding that much money to the debt is bad, as you could imagine. It's bad for the economy because money is going toward the paying off the debt versus other programs in the United States. And it also increases inflation because there is that much more money in the system. That's how prices go up, because their demand goes up for those things because more wealthy Americans have money in their pocket to buy things. So for one, those tax cuts are also going to hurt the economy.
John Thune, who is the Senate incoming Republican leader, who also met with Elon Musk this morning, told me that perhaps mandatory programs are areas that they're looking to make cuts in, like Social Security, for example.
We have to reduce spending to live within our means. Yeah, that necessarily involves some temporary hardship, but it will ensure long-term prosperity.
Elon Musk will also hurt the economy. If he does what he says he will and tries to slash the government spending, what he's essentially doing is firing a huge amount of the American workforce. Federal employees are good paying middle class jobs. They are the kind of jobs where you could actually have a living wage, where you could provide for your family. You're not going to get rich from it, but you are being paid for your skill. You may have actually taken less money than you would in the private sector because in exchange, you know that you also have good health insurance and you have good retirement. These are the people who are potentially going to be fired if Elon Musk gets his way. His idea of trimming agencies really means trimming people and getting rid of thousands of middle-class jobs. Because we know he's not planning on touching the military budget, because he's not talking about touching the military budget, even though that is the largest spending in the government. He's talking about things like cutting Social Security and Medicare, programs that we pay into, expecting the government to pay us back when it's time, and trimming the agencies, which means firing people who have good paying middle class jobs. This will hurt the economy. This will cause those kind of dips that Trump talks about. But Elon Musk actually warned us in advance, and different than Trump, he said that Americans will feel the pain of their cuts before we feel the benefits. But he dismisses that because he is the richest man in the world. So any pain is theoretical. But having somebody be fired from a job and not be able to find another job for months, that's not theoretical. Having the stock market crash and your 401k retirement be affected right before you're supposed to retire, that's not theoretical. These are the kind of pains that Americans will feel if Trump and Elon Musk get it their way.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.